Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee and it's time we had an update from the operations room. So it's been a little while since I've done an update, since I've changed over the format of the main videos on Sunday, and I want to start right at the beginning. One of the last things I did after I'd made that change was playing a remote game with Jonathan Freitag, the Battle of Zalakar in 1086. Now the Ridgetts have been playing remote games with Jonathan for some time now, and every game has been fun, interesting, tactically challenged. At the start of the month, Jonathan hosted our motley band to refight the Battle of Zalakar. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fought near Badajoz in October 1086, and this was a decisive clash between King Alfonso VI of Castile and Leon and the Almoravid ruler Yusuf ibn Tashfin. So before I recount how our game went, I thought I would give a very brief summary of the historical counter. Alarmed by Alfonso's capture of Toledo the previous year, the Muslim ruler Al-Mutamid of Seville appealed to Yusuf for help against the advancing Christians. Yusuf crossed from North Africa with about 8,000 disciplined Berber troops, joining Andalusian allies to confront Alfonso's larger but less coordinated army. At dawn, Alfonso launched a fierce attack that broke the Andalusian front line, but Yusuf's Almoravid reserves absorbed the assault. As the Christians became overextended, Yusuf's elite guard counterattacked, striking their flanks and rear. The Castilian army collapsed, suffering heavy losses, while Alfonso was wounded and barely escaped with his life. The victory at Zalakar halted Christian expansion in Iberia for a generation and marked the rise of the Almoravid power in Andalus. Its name, Al-Zalakar, the slippery ground, recalls the bloody field where Yusuf's disciplined tactics decisively restored Muslim strength in Spain. So how did our game compare? Well, Ray and I commanded the Christian forces, though perhaps without the zeal of Alfonso himself. We began cautiously, too cautiously as it turned out, allowing the Muslim army to seize the initiative. Their skirmishers advanced quickly, peppering our lines of missiles, while their nimble mounted troops harassed our flanks and disrupted our formations. Realising we were losing momentum, we pushed our cavalry forward in search of a decisive breakthrough. Unfortunately, by then the Almoravids had moved up their solid spear-armed infantry blocks, blunting the impact of our charges. One of my night regiments managed to slip through somehow through a gap in their line, made by more by fortune than planning, and though my dice rolling was no better than my opponent's, I passed key cohesion checks at just the right moment. This allowed me to win several melees in succession, driving their units back and momentarily threatening their rear. Ray achieved something similar on the opposing flank, but despite punching holes in their line, our best cavalry never even managed to fully engage the enemy. As the evening wore on, Jonathan called time. Both sides were still unbroken and roughly equal in strength, so we agreed to call it a draw. But to be honest, I think Ray and I were relieved to end at that point. Another couple of turns may well have seen the Muslims secure a victory, and it would have been a tidy victory as well at that. Then barely a week later, several rejects gathered for what may well end up proving to be our last in-person game of the year. Stuart, as usual, kept the subject of our game to himself, so we all turned up not really knowing what to expect. This time he put on a 28mm Wars of the Roses game, and his troops were laid out on the table waiting for us. This was going to be the Battle of Swanage Bay, a what-if 28mm Wars of the Roses game that imagined a desperate Lancastrian stand on the Dorset coast, backs to the sea and nowhere to run. Stuart made it quite clear from the beginning that if we lost, our whole army would have to surrender. Somerset commanded the centre, Devon the left, and the Prince of Wales defended the nearby town on our flank, while their opponents, Edward IV, the Duke of Gloucester and Lord Hastings, pressed in from three directions. I took charge of Somerset and Devon, while Surjit took control of the Prince of Wales. Colin controlled Edward IV and Gloucester, and Richard commanded Hastings. The Lancastrians needed to move off the beach fast and get onto higher ground and give themselves some space so that if they did retreat, they weren't pushed off the table. And then we had to let our archers do the talking. The Yorkist plan was simple. Hastings would seize the town while Edward and Gloucester pushed us back towards the water. Now, we were very lucky. We won the initiative only once, but it mattered. My archers opened the battle with a storm of arrows that tore through the Yorkist lines. Collins' missile troops never really recovered, and by the third turn, most were gone or useless. In the town, Serget's men fought hard behind barricades until a failed morale check forced a retreat, putting the prince's position in a bit of jeopardy. Now, while the crisis unfolded, I call it a crisis, my opponents claimed that it wasn't quite as bad as it looked, but it felt bad to us. My left flank managed to surge. My crossbowmen wiped out the last of Gloucester's handgunners, and my longbows cut down his billmen. Another morale check followed, and Colin rolled the worst possible roll we could, and his entire battle disintegrated, routing off the field in one go. With Gloucester's flank gone and Hastings' attack potentially going to get bogged down trying to fight its way through the town, the Yorkists conceded the fight. The Lancastrians had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, helped by some fine shooting and a dash of luck from the dice gods. It was one of those games that reminded us why we love this period. Fast, bloody, unpredictable and gloriously dramatic, even when history never wrote it that way. Now, last week I put out a video report from the second day of the Warfare show, and it really captured what makes a Sunday at Farnborough so enjoyable. The pace is a little calmer, the aisles are a little roomier, and there's that friendly end of season feel as traders, gamers and hobbyists make the most of the final hours. 4 of us from the Rejects made the trip, and while I filmed plenty of the lovely games on display, I focused more on the traders this year. Warfare always offers a fantastic spread from big games to tiny specialists, and it's impossible not to stumble across something you didn't realise you needed. Ray and I even picked up some figures for a new project, and it was great to catch up with the people from Blots as they work towards releasing Charlie Foxtrot's terrain ranges next spring. The bring and buy was buzzing as always, although it didn't seem quite as busy as in previous years. I was able to get to the front, and although I escaped without spending a penny, others in the group weren't so lucky. A quick sweep of the tournament hall rounded things off before my knees began filing formal complaints. The absolute highlight though was meeting so many people who watch the channel. Your kind words made a real difference and keep me creating, so thank you very much. Now, next weekend I'm going to Dragonmeet to scratch my role-playing itch. This isn't one that wargamers are likely to be flocking to because it is a role-playing convention, although there will be some retailers present selling miniatures and paint and dice. The show is dedicated, as I say, to role-playing games, and aside from for a healthy trade presence, it always has tons of participation games and demos to interest anyone who goes. There will also be a few new board games being unveiled, so this will be a fun event to attend. And going with my kids, they may not have taken up wargaming, but they've definitely picked up my love of role-playing games like D&D. I'm planning on doing a show report, so keep an eye open for that if it's your sort of thing. So that's what I've been getting up to. So what about the channel? Bit of a channel update. Well, by the time this video is published, the channel will have reached 6,000 subscribers, which to me is a mind-blowing number. Thank you to every one of you, whether you're a new subscriber or an old grognard. I really appreciate your support and your amazingly positive contributions to the conversation in the comment section. Thank you so much. So what about the workbench? Well, my Russian Ulans are still on the painting desk, but progress is being made. These are lovely sculpts, but the detail was proving a challenge to this particular ham-fisted painter. I'm getting there, and I'll probably be very happy with the finished unit, but it's challenged me to say the least. If I remember rightly, I think I've mentioned before in a previous video that I described them as the last unit for my Russian army for the retreat from Moscow, but that was a silly statement to make, of course. Since then I've bought more Cossacks and a few other items, so no project is ever finished, not when there are so many new shiny miniatures still to be purchased. So I thought I'd also do a book review as part of this video. So I've been giving a bit of thought to Christmas presents, and I was wondering if I could recommend something that you could suggest to your loved ones instead of socks or something equally mundane. And I thought of this particular book, which I received as a present a few years ago. So the Churchill Tank Owner's Workshop Manual by Nigel Montgomery. It's every bit as rewarding reading it the second time round as it was when I originally got it. Like me and hobbyists, I have a soft spot for the Haynes series of military manuals, these distinctive hardbacks that blend the style of a car owner's guide with the depth of a serious historical study. I already own the Tiger and Sherman volumes, and the Churchill book easily matches, if not surpasses, the quality of those earlier titles. What makes this series, and this volume in particular, so engaging is the balance it strikes between history, engineering and restoration detail. The Churchill manual doesn't just recount the tank's service record, it quite literally takes it apart, showing readers how this complex heavy machine was built, operated and maintained. The wealth of photographs, technical diagrams and wartime images is staggering. You come away from the book with the sense that you've crawled through every compartment and turned every bolt yourself. Nigel Montgomery, the author, is arguably the authority on the Churchill tank. He heads the Churchill Tank Project, a remarkable restoration effort dedicated to bringing several wartime examples, 2 Churchill 3s and a Churchill 4 for instance, back to working condition. Now, much of the content in this book comes directly from hands-on experience during these restorations. That gives the manual an authenticity and depth that's hard to find elsewhere. It isn't written from second-hand sources, it's the product of someone who spent years elbow deep in real machinery. One of the strongest aspects of the book is its honest assessment of the Churchill's evolution. Montgomery doesn't shy away from the tank's troubled beginnings, rushed into production, underpowered and hampered by mechanical teething problems. He also shows how British engineers and crews identified those flaws early, adapted quickly and turned the vehicle into one of the most versatile and reliable tanks of the later war years. The Churchill's transformation from an overburdened prototype to a battle-hardened machine capable of scaling cliffs and shrugging off punishment is told in fascinating detail. For wargamers, model builders and anyone fascinated by armoured warfare, this book is a goldmine. The technical illustrations are invaluable for modelers trying to get details right, while the historical context helps wargamers understand why the tank performed as it did in the battlefield. Even if you're not a tank enthusiast per se, there's something deeply satisfying about understanding how a design so initially flawed could become such a symbol of British persistence and ingenuity. In short, the Churchill Tank Owner's Workshop Manual is another triumph in the Haynes military series. It's part restoration diary, part battlefield history and part engineering deep dive. For anyone who's even has a passing interest in the vehicles of World War II, or for those who just enjoy beautifully researched and illustrated reference books, it's an absolute must-have. So that's it for now. I'd love to hear what you think about this new format for a hobby update. And as always, please join the conversation in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And maybe you consider becoming a member. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from the channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep going and of course, keep rolling high.